Ethics of the Fathers is originally 5 chapters and then a 6 chapters connected to it. So in essence, we view it as 6 chapters. We study 1 chapter a Sabbath. So from between Passover to Shavuos, every year, there are 6 weeks, 6 Saturdays, 6 Shabbosim, and every Shabbos, every Sabbath, we study 1 chapter of ethics, of morals, of going beyond the letter of the law to prepare us from the Exodus as we climb upward to be worthy to receive God's law, God's Torah, on the holiday of Shavuos. So that's 1 set of these 6 chapters. After the Shavuos holiday, we relearn these chapters another 3 times. We go through it 3 more series of times from Shavuos until the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. So in essence, from Passover until Rosh Hashanah, we learn this 4 sets of times. And each time we're looking and really trying to take what are the lessons here for us? What can I glean? How can I get closer to God through these timeless, short injunctions that are really, again, not only the concepts that the sages created for some roughly 1900 years ago or so, that's rough, but really for now as well. So this week is the week of chapter 3, meaning this coming Sabbath, we will be studying chapter 3. Now, Sabbath is the culmination of the preceding week and gives energy for the coming week. So the culmination of this week is chapter 3 of Ethics of the Fathers. So really this whole week is really contributing towards that energy. So I thought it'd be nice if we looked in chapter 3 of Ethics of the Fathers and tried to glean what we could in terms of what's relevant for our own personal lives from these timeless thoughts. So the first one, and again, there are many deeper and deeper levels of understanding what is meant by these words. There is much commentary on these words. I'm not giving any of that. We're just literally skimming the surface, and in the most surface level, what can we understand about these concepts and how is it relevant to us as people that are also striving to get closer to God? Now understand, put this a little bit in perspective, especially this first time around of the 4 times that we study this, is in these very significant weeks from Passover to Shavuos. These are the weeks where every day we're working on ourselves because we're recreating the history. This is a reenactment. Every year it's a reenactment. The original journey from Passover to Shavuos, from the Exodus to the receiving of the Torah, which was 3,300 some years ago, when the Jews left Egypt, they were on a very, very, very low spiritual level, but they were working on themselves. They were climbing. And they climbed and climbed and climbed until 49 days later, when they received the Torah, they were at the peak, at the pinnacle, the highest as a nation we have ever achieved from 49 days of really serious work. And we, again, reenact that because every day we count the counting up toward the giving of the Torah. And each day of counting is also supposed to be a refinement of a certain trait. Like today, we're in the week of Tiferes, which is the 3rd week of the 7 weeks from Passover to Shavuos. And Tiferes is the trait of beauty, of truth, of harmony and balance and compassion and Torah. Within Tiferes tonight, once it gets dark, which is happening about now, it's Netzach of Tiferes, within this overarching trait of Tiferes, of beauty and truth and harmony and compassion. It's specifically the subcategory of Netzach, which is the idea of the commitment to create the victory. In other words, we have big flashes, and then we have the many small steps to achieve the goal. So tonight's energy, Netzach of Tiferes, is the commitment to achieve the victory in balance and compassion and harmony and truth. That's the energy. So I'm saying this meaning that there are various ways we're working on ourselves in these weeks from Passover to Shavuos to be able to receive God's Torah, God's will and wisdom, and to really absorb it inside of ourselves. One way is through this nightly count and the work connected with that count. And another way is through studying Ethics of the Fathers, which is what we're going to be focusing on this week, specifically chapter 3 of Ethics of the Fathers, because this Sabbath we'll be studying chapter 3. So the first statement from chapter 3, we're told, reflect upon 3 things and you will not come to sin. Know where you come from, know where you're going, and know before whom you're destined to give an accounting. And if you think of those 3 thoughts, where you came from, where you're going, and the accounting that you will give to God, this can help you lead a very, very righteous, virtuous life. So if we think about this idea, know where you came from, the idea as delineated here is that we came from a very low level. We came not from the highest, most sublime spiritual realities. Probably not for all of us. We came from a very low reality. Where are we going? Well, after a person lives their life, we come from the dust, we go back to the dust. So we came from a low reality. We're going back ultimately. Of course, we believe the redemption is coming, so we will not have this point, but classically going back to that dust and the decay and decomposition of the body. And then, of course, the soul gives an accounting before the ultimate King of all King, God. So what is the sage's point here? The sages is saying that sometimes we have distractions from what we know is the right way to live, that we have a value system and we know how we want to live, but things distract us, things get in the way, things derail us. And we're being told, if you stop and think, where you're coming from, where you're going to, and giving your accounting of your life to God, it could keep you focused. It can make you feel like, wow, I want to take the time I have in this world and do something worthwhile with it. Do something good with it. Because man lives, man makes a lot of noise, and then man is gone. What does he leave behind? His virtue, his good deeds, the eternal things he did of connecting to God. That's what's valuable in our life. That's what lasts forever. Lives can be very transient, and sometimes as you start getting older, I feel like I'm starting to get older. And as you start getting older and your body starts giving you these aches and pains of old age, beginning old age, and you're like, uh-oh, what have I accomplished in this world? God gave me this priceless gift. It's called life. What have I done with it? What am I doing with it? And just keeping this thought is sort of like a goal. Like fix your eyes on the goal so you don't veer off course. So if you fix your eyes on that goal, the sages are saying you won't veer off course. Now it's interesting to get a little bit deeper in this concept, because he says, reflect upon 3 things and you won't come to sin. Where you come from, where you're going to, and whom you're giving an accounting before. And it's like, hey, we can count. He doesn't have to tell me reflect upon 3 things. I can also realize these are 3 things: where I came from, where I'm going to, and whom I'm giving an accounting before. And the language, the Mishnaic language, this is what we're studying, is very brief, is very cryptic almost. They don't waste any words. So why would he give this unnecessary introduction, reflect upon 3 things, when I also can see there are 3 things, and he doesn't need to tell me there are 3. So why is he wasting his words? The Lodge Rebbe says, actually, there's another message embedded here beyond the message that we just gave over, the simple literal message, which is very powerful. There's another message, which is sometimes people forget that there's 3 elements to focus on. Sometimes people think there's 2, me and God, 2. And the sage is saying, no, don't get confused. There's 3. There's you, there's God, and there's a world. Because whatever we're doing in the context of the world. And it's not like the ultimate is to go in my bubble, to go in my cave, to remove myself from the world and it's just be a me, God reality, because God has lots of angels that do that. God put us in this world that we should know that however we're serving God with the world and through the world. And we should look at the world around us as our opportunity to give to God, as our challenge perhaps, but also as our opportunity, as there's something here I need to do. There's some way I'm supposed to impact my environment and bring my environment closer to God. Because everyone in this class is very fortunate. You know about God. I mean, you're on the class. Otherwise, you wouldn't be on the class. So you all, on some level, have an awareness of God that most of the world doesn't have. So you're like chosen, you're blessed, you're fortunate, you're lucky, however you want to look at it. So you can make, and it's me and it's God and all that spiritual stuff. And we're told, well, 3 things, not 2. Remember, you're in a world. And remember, you're supposed to be interacting with that world. Of course, we interact with the world. We're human beings. We have to interact with the world. But bring God in when you're interacting with the world. We know you're going to interact. We know you're going to eat. We know you're going to sleep. We know you're going to have to go shopping. We know you're going to work. We know you're going to do all that. But it's 3. You, God, and world. So it's not like you, God, and then you, world. No. It's a triumvirate. It's you, God, and world together. So don't just have this one-on-one, you and God, bring the world in. Don't just do this one-on-one, you and world, bring God in. That always, as you're wanting to get closer to God, you're aware of your responsibility to the world and your ability to take the world and bring the world closer to God. So that's the first, as we call it, Mishnah statement in this chapter. So any reflections on that? Any reflections? I gave you 2 levels of thinking about this. Either the first level, which is sort of a scrutiny on like, where did I come from? And where is my body going to wind up? And what am I doing with my life in between? And then the second dimension of thought, which is whatever I'm doing, God wants that he and world should be connected through me. And am I doing that? And how can I do that more? And how can I more bring God into my world and bring my world closer to God? Any thoughts on that, on either of those dimensions, on how that applies to your life? Do you feel that as Noahides, your responsibility to the world to bring the world closer to God?
Yes, I think so.
Me too.
Yeah. So any tips on how you do that, Natalie?
Sorry, I'm eating at the same time.
No problem.
I'm just trying to think. It's more that some of it is it's in what you don't say. I mean, it's pretty obvious, around my work, there's a lot of people who swear and I don't swear. A lot of people who drink at work functions, and there's nothing inherently wrong with drinking at work functions. I don't think it's sinful particularly, but I never do because I always want to keep all my faculties, and I'm the lightest lightweight on the planet. And I just always want to keep things, very respectful and professional and well-mannered, well-behaved. And I think I've mentioned this before with work, like religion manages to come up for me with work all the time. So it's like we've talked about before, where it's in doing things that you're not thinking about. And we're not perfect. We're not perfect with the kids. We're not perfect at work. But when people are complaining about work,
God has many ways of talking to us. And if we're focused, and I love Sabra's analogy, I think that's so powerful, just envisioning that as wise, compassionate. He's not going to wait and 3 months later tell you something. You'll be like, I'm getting a critique. I don't know on what. God's saying, I don't even know what he's talking about. What have I done wrong in the past 3 months or 6 months or a year? God's not going to do that. God's giving us that positive feedback or not. And when we receive it, we can right away reflect and what have I been doing that I'm getting this warm hug? Or what have I been doing that I'm getting this sense of what? No, you're going down not a great path. And absorb the lesson that God is sharing with us. So I think that's great, Sabra. And yes,
Thank you.
Wait 6 months.
Thank you.
He's gonna be on you. And the more you listen, I believe, the more he's gonna be talking to you. We don't talk if the person's not listening. Why waste our words? We try a little. But if we know someone's actually listening, we're going to focus and give them that attention and help them. And how much more so God? If he knows we're listening, he's going to be giving us those messages. He's going to be telling us, and he's very creative. He will find myriads of ways to give us the messages, what we need to know. Absolutely. Anyone else? Any other personal reflections on this and how you see either of these two concepts in your life? Either the deeper concept of it's me, God, and world, and what am I doing about that? Or the first level, the basic level of understanding it, the shortness of life, where I came from, where I'm going to, and reporting to God reviewing my life and wanting to, as we would say, give him nachas, give him a good report, live a life worth living, live up to the gift of life that he's giving us. There's a prayer we as Jews say every morning. It's a short prayer where we thank God for giving us back our life. And there's a story with a young man. He was probably a senior in high school. He was going off to college. And he knew in college, he probably wouldn't pray as well as he should. He'd be busy, distracted, but he wanted to at least do it somewhat right. So he had a relationship with the Lubavitcher Rebbe's mother. And he asked her, he was a delivery boy for his father's grocery store, and she was a very grandmother-like woman. So every week he'd deliver the groceries, he'd get the cookies and the warm milk, and And he said, I'm going off to college next year, and I probably won't be praying everything properly. Can you ask your son, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, what's his favorite prayer? Because I want to focus on one prayer to do it right. So, do you know your son's favorite prayer? She said, I don't, but that's a great question. I will ask. So next week he came, he got his cookies, he got his warm milk. And she said, I asked my son for you. Okay, he's ready. What's the prayer? How long is this prayer going to be? That's the Lubavitcher Rebbe's favorite prayer. And she said, it's the Modeh Ani prayer. The Modeh Ani is that first prayer, which is Modeh Ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim shechzarta bi nishmasi chemla rab emunasecha, 12 words. It's a 12-word prayer. It's as short as you could get. And she said, my son said that's his favorite prayer. He's 12 words. That one line I say in the morning, that's the most important prayer I should focus on. My son said, he's okay, I got off the hook with that one, but wow. A while later, he happened to be, there's no such thing as happened, of course, at a Hasidic gathering of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe happened to start discussing this prayer. And the Rebbe, over the years, has discussed this prayer many times and given many deep explanations on it. But here the Rebbe says something very simple, short, and profound. The Rebbe said, what are we saying in this prayer? Every morning we wake up. There's the first words we say to God. The first words we're allowed to talk are this prayer. What are we saying in this prayer? We're saying, thank you, God, for giving me another chance, another opportunity. Because I'm thanking you, God, for giving me back my life, giving me back my soul. And every morning as I wake up, you gave me the gift of life one more time, which means you trusted me one more time. One more time, you're saying, yes, I'll give you another day. I trust you. I believe in you. I know you're going to use it properly. And when this man heard this explanation, knowing this is Lubavitcher Rebbe's favorite prayer, he sort of put it together as oh, wow, this is the message that he, for sure, was supposed to hear. every morning when you wake up, stop and reflect and thank God for the gift of life and understand life is a gift and recommit to using that gift properly. And when you have that like perspective, which is a different way of sort of saying what we're saying here in this thought, it keeps you aligned. It keeps your vision and reality very, very in sync. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this? All right, let's do the second one. So there's a number of thoughts here. I'm just going to give one. It's long. It says, if two people sit together and no words of Torah are shared between them, it's a company of scorners, meaning it's empty company. But if two sit together and exchange words of Torah, the divine presence rests between them. Now you could say, but wait, what if there's nobody around but me? So it goes on to say, and if there's one person alone, but he's engaged in Torah, God is also present. God is also rewarding him. So the idea here, and I think, again, it could have a lot of practical relevance, is every situation is an opportunity. And when you're with another person, it's an opportunity to share a thought of God, to share the concept of God, to share a reflection of God, to share something that reminds the other person of the existence of God. And when I do that, it's me, the other person, and God. The three of us are together. But if I don't utilize the opportunity, I'm with another person, but I don't bring God in, it's like, oh, that was a wasted moment. That was a wasted opportunity. You didn't bring God in because you didn't mention him. You didn't share a thought about him. You didn't do something to make the other person remember him. So you could say, well, that's pretty intense if every time I'm talking to someone, I bring in God. But you could start by finding the best opportunities or the best people. Some people are more easy to bring God in, and some opportunities are more easy to bring God in. But it's the mandate, it's the mission. Like we said in the previous statement, it's not just me and God. It's me, God, and world. It's three. So I'm great and comfortable with God. God says, good. I want you to make my world comfortable with me as well. Right? That's what we say is special about Abraham. Not that he recognized God. He wasn't the first to recognize God. But that he made it his mission. His life's mission was to bring the world to recognize God. And that's what made him Abraham. So any people have done this or do this or have certain opportunities where they really consciously bring God into the conversation.
I gotta say, I don't. Unfortunately, I've always just kind of waited, and if it comes up, it comes up, and we talk about it. But I never thought about really making a point to bring it up. But I gotta say, that sounds like Dixie.
Yeah. Where's Dixie?
Someone else has tried to consciously bring God in to the conversation?
I have in the past, but as I think about it, I realize that I tend to wait to do it unless I already know the person and I know kind of where they're at with God. I haven't been very strategic about or bold about trying to bring God in where I have no idea where that person is, if that makes any sense.
That makes
And
sense.
so I think that's something I could work on.
But you're saying if you feel it's safe, that's how I'm understanding what you're saying, Aaron. If you feel it's safe, then you do make a conscious effort to bring God in. That's great. As versus just not thinking about it at all. That's wonderful. I see Kim sent a message that she does this with her family and she doesn't do it with coworkers. So it's interesting, Kim, because when I first read it, I thought you said the opposite of like, well, you could do it with your coworkers, but not with your family. And I could say, I could understand that. And you're saying you can do it with your family, but not with your coworkers. I could understand that as well. I could really see it going in either direction of like, where's comfort, which I think is what Erin was saying, that like she knows she should do it and she does in situations that feel safe to her. So the awareness you should do it, like Kim is saying, I'm aware I should do it and I do it with my family, or Erin is saying, I'm aware I should do it and I do it with people that feel safe in terms of their relationship to God, is great. once you do that, you can start to extend yourself to other waters that might not feel as safe. But definitely, let's get a baseline of understanding that everyone who knows about God, it's like a gift. And there's a lot of people in this world that don't have that gift, weren't exposed, weren't reminded, but really could be, like could really just even bringing in like whatever you say and say, thank God. Thank God this worked out. Thank God it was so late and dark and raining and there was a parking spot near my house. That's a very normal sentence. Dark, raining, there was a parking spot. Thank God. It's like, what'd she say? Ding. It's reminding the other person of the reality of God. You're not getting into a deep philosophical conversation here. You're not spouting philosophy or theology, but you're reminding them about God. And Danielle said she does what Aaron does. We believe that every human being believes in God. Every human being. It's intuitive. It's natural to a human to believe in God, to have an innate relationship with God. So many people over the years in this class have shared how somehow as a child they just knew about God and nothing in their environment was teaching them about God, but somehow they knew. And that's true really for every human being. Of course, the world might educate you to not believe in that inner voice of your reality of God. But underneath, like no atheist in a foxhole, underneath there is this really very intuitive relationship with God. But in our world, very easy to like forget, very easy for it to be pushed to the side. So just like saying, thank God that worked out, or, oh my gosh, we really need God's help here. Just having God on your lips as a constant, you never know who you're reminding. You never know who is like remembering about God because of what you're saying and making it very safe and very, again, not pushing anything on someone, but just on your lips, as is natural, is God. And that's how we should all talk. Should be natural to us because it should be how we think. It should be how we're wired, that when good things happen, we say, thank God. And when we're in trouble, we'd say, ooh, I need God's help here. Ooh, we need God's help. So just that constant bringing God in, you never know who's listening and who's reminded. Now, I totally understand what Aaron and Danielle are saying and what Kim, I believe, is also saying in her words, but probably meaning very similar, that if we want to get deeper and maybe share more, very often it's hard for us to do if it doesn't feel safe. And if it feels safer, we can say, oh my gosh, I was at this class last night and I heard this idea. It was so meaningful to me. Let me share it with you. Now, that's also something you could do with anyone. But if you want to start by doing that with safe people, that's great. Target who's safe. Kim said her family. Other people might say, not my family, my coworkers. They'll be more polite and respectful. My neighbor, not my neighbor. My mother, not my mother. Think of 1 or 2 or 3 people in your world that you could share more with. That not only should the name of God be on your lips, which the name of God should be on all of our lips, always, but that I could really share, that I could share my excitement with children, right? Right, Natalie, you have your captive audience, right? Listening to us right now, like, oh my gosh, that was such a great thought. What do you guys think? Or this is what I heard in the class. Share with your spouse, share with your friends. Find those people that are safe, that you're not just mentioning God, but you're really able to share words of Torah, share things that are meaningful to you. Now, the truth is, you can be super inspired by something and share it with someone else who's equally aligned and aware of God, and they can be like, oh, that's nice. Meaning what flickers and inspires and ignites your flame might not ignite the flame of the next person, not because they're doubting anything, but just because every one of us are unique. But it's always good to share, and it's always good to listen. Sometimes when I'm with someone, I'll say, you tell me something that's inspired you recently. And that's also a nice way to create a conversation without you always being the mouthpiece, but also you being receptive and listening and absorbing what the other person would like to share. Natalie?
Sometimes at school, my friends ask me about, why are you a Noahide? Why do you believe in God? I was like, my family believes in God. I like believe with my family. I do the same. Like, that's what I answer usually. And they just say, oh, that's interesting. Like, and it's like a lot.
So in your school, obviously, if they know you're a Noahide, that means that what you're saying, they're listening to and viewing it as like, oh, these are the words of a Noahide. So it's a lot because it's a big responsibility. Big responsibility when you're 8 to be representing God in a school. But we all know that says that God never gives you something you can handle. Right? That's one of the rules, the axioms, the rules of how God relates to us is he never gives us something we can't handle. So if he's asking you to be God's representative in that school, that means he's giving you the ability, the strength, the wisdom to represent God in that school, which is pretty cool.
So
Anyone else?
yeah, I have something.
Sure, Mary.
When I was growing up, no one ever talked to me about God. And so I think that's why I feel so uncomfortable. Like I don't know how to talk to people about God. But I do always love it when people talk to me about God. I just appreciate it so much. And I've grown because of that. And I'm just so glad you brought this up tonight because this is something that I'd like to work on, being able to talk to people about God.
Thank you. I think what you're saying is a very common experience because I think in a lot of different circles in our secular world, it's considered like not a word we're supposed to say. It sounds strange, but like, oh, that's not a polite word, so to speak, which is like sort of a bizarre way to express it. And you're right. If I never encountered this as a child, how can I be comfortable doing this as an adult? You're absolutely right. And it is sort of breaking ground for us to say, this is the best word. And I'm God's messenger when I mention him. Every time I mention him, again, every one of us is God's billboard. Every one of us is God's messenger. Every one of us has the ability to bring his awareness to someone else who, like yourself, not that they don't believe in God, they're not even aware. It's so far from them because nobody ever talks about it. Nobody talks to them about it. It's just not out there. And there's so much else out there. There's so much noise in our world, and there's so much distractions in our world. And there's so many things that are taking us away from our inner core. And we should be so happy because we are such an entitled generation and we have so much. And then like, it's not what we're going through, you know? And it can feel so hollow and so empty. And why am I hollow and empty? I got such a great life. Officially, I got everything. Because human beings believe in God, and human beings they crave that relationship with God. And when they have that relationship, then they can really feel centered in from their very, very, very core. So every time you can share the concept, even as I'm saying, by saying, thank God this worked out. With God's help, this will work out. We need God's help for this to work out. Even just bringing it in like that, it's very powerful for people who it's so foreign, they don't even like think like that.